eight qualities, eight essential qualities that qualify governance as good, including inclusion, participation, accountability, and transparency. But doubts still arise as to whether or not these essential qualities are practical in a country like Nigeria. On today's conversation, we will be discussing the qualities to look out for in governance in Nigeria, and we have the country director, Accountability Lab Nigeria, here with us. And on this conversation, basically, will surround the essential qualities to look out for and how we can ensure that these qualities are maximized in Nigeria. So, welcome, Mr. Friday. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, before we delve into the conversation, I'd like to find out if you were to change one thing, one aspect of Nigeria's government, what would that be and why?
Interesting. Thank you guys for having me. It's an honor. If there's one thing that I have to change in the Nigerian governance system, it's for me, I would say the courage to help people understand their jobs, because when people join civil service or public service as it may be, it's more of joining because I have who was giving me a job, or some of my relative who was put me in the place in that position. So that is linked to more like being loyal to the person instead of considering your capabilities on the job. So that actually affects the way people operate. So rather than operate to serve a purpose, you're operating to serve a person, or like favor or being loyal to a person. But for me, I think I should be able to change how people are courageous to do their job, the way they are mandated to do their jobs and all that. We've seen from past research or surveys, like most government officials don't necessarily have like a job description. So when you get on the job, you don't even know what you're doing. You're basically doing a yes sir or yes ma'am and trying to do more like admin roles, more like on a daily. But if people understand their job description and are courageous to deliver the service they intend to deliver, or which they are assigned to deliver to Nigerian citizens, I think that's something I would like to change if I get an opportunity.
Okay, so Hillary has already established the fact that governance in Nigeria is not as it should be.
Right.
What would you say is, out of curiosity and then for awareness, what would you say are the basic lapses in governance in Nigeria?
For me, number one is we always hear the word political will, which is quite huge. Governance cannot exist without politics. There must be politics, which is quite understandable, but there's a huge gap in that space where you have people playing politics with the job. So rather than do your job, which is like why you were hired, then people play politics because they belong to this political party or that political party. Yes, basically every government is as a result of the political party. But how do you serve the people's purpose? How do you serve the people's needs? So rather than having to serve people's needs, you find out, you bring our politicians into the game and they serve their own purpose through budgetary purposes where you have contracts, procurement processes. I'm going to give this to my constituency, I'm going to give this to my political party, I'm going to give this to the chairman. So it makes it difficult for us to understand what good governance is in that context. So for me, political will at every point I hear that word gets me confused. Take for instance, I'm going to give you political will to fight corruption, which is another angle to good governance. You have somebody saying there's a political will to fight corruption. But on the other hand, are you fighting the people who were then, are you fighting the opposition, or are you fighting corruption? Because, like I said in my initial thoughts is, if I'm hired to do a job, I'm not going to be bothered about who is this political party or who is that person. But if you are corrupt, I'm going to bring you to books. If there's what you call it, if people have raised a concern or an allegation against you, we bring you to the books and maybe possibly go to the court and find out what the problem is. And if you are guilty, you go to jail. But we've seen manipulations from people who are guilty of a crime being in prison, and you find out they've been bailed, and after a couple of years, we don't have those cases, all due to political will and the politics that we play around governance, which makes a huge gap. in delivering good governance.
Okay, so following up from what you just said concerning political will and the issue of playing politics, so is it safe to say that those are like key factors that hinder good governance?
Would I say yes or no? So just like a foundation. So take for instance, I want to stay a bit with what you call them, the anti-corruption agencies, ICBC, EFCC, PACAC, and all of that. They were created for a purpose. Like if I'm hired to do my job, I'm going to be there to do why the purpose of that organization. So personally, I don't think that's why I said what political will gets me confused as a person. An organization like Aspedos Foundation has its purpose to deliver services to children, trainings and all that. Then you do what you're meant to do. So why do you need a political will to do what you need to do? So it becomes a question for me when people are not courageous to do that, when people are not accountable to their own organization, rather they are being held by political powers that be over them. So it becomes a challenge.
Okay, so like talking about qualities now, qualities that qualify good governance. We've seen the United Nations list out a number of them: inclusion, participation, accountability, transparency. We can't take away the fact that in Nigeria some of these things lack. Am I correct to say that? Okay, so for a country as Nigeria, what should we look out for? What qualities should we look out for that are practical and that can be done in Nigeria?
I like the fact, like you said, practical situations in Nigeria are quite, should I say, difficult? So we run a project called Integrity Icon, and we found a couple of people who seem to be honest, according to our judgment and our programming. Basically, they have those qualities like they're accountable to their organizations, to their staff. They are transparent, as the case may be. They deliver services, which is one of the major things to ensure, like, if my office has a budget to operate or to deliver service, let the people that are supposed to access those services have them. So we find all those like basics. But however, you still find a larger group of people who seem to be accountable but don't have these qualities. So the point for me in governance processes, in serving the people, is you are hired to serve the people. You are hired to, every year we have the national budget for a purpose. The purpose is to serve the Nigerian people and to make people feel better in terms of the resources we have. So that is basically what it is. So if I'm working for government, I'm going to be ensuring like those services are due for the citizens. So we find those as a lacking factor within government. So for me, I'm going to say yes. People use the word every time: transparency, accountability, good governance, participation. We're young people. Let's not forget the fact that one of the things we figured out is we need to now break down what those means, like you said, in practical terms to you and I. I'm not going to say accountability or you need to be accountable to any other person, but what does it mean to the person in secondary school or primary school? So when they are growing up, just a couple of days I was speaking to a couple of people and I said, people need to now still go back to what Nigerian government needs to make Nigerians understand what does the pledge mean. It basically just says to be, well, the initial part says to be faithful, loyal, and honest. Well, how many people are honest? So we need to now grow a generation of new civil servants who will feel into the system if we have to change things, and we need to change things, to build on honesty, participation, inclusion, and all of that, to get into government for the right reasons. Because people are also getting into government for the wrong reasons, but we need to now train people. And I must commend you guys for the work you do as well. We need to now start that basic foundation of training people in the right senses of what accountability means, what participation means in its basic terms, so people can understand and get into government for the right reasons.
Okay, you've said a lot so far. Just curious, do we have metrics in place to measure these qualities and effectiveness in Nigeria?
I would say no. My position being, I mentioned earlier, like these metrics, because we have, politics is the bedrock of governance, and politicians have overtaken us. So basically, you and I are not going to measure any politician in public office based on, I'm not sure what we're going, what metrics. From our own program, the Integrity Icon, Accountability Lab basically we're trying to make governance work for people. So we do this kind of projects which are exciting to engage young people, exciting, creative ways. Then if you have to measure a politician's, measure whatever his capabilities are using metrics, you find out like there are always lapses. It's been said globally, or not just Nigeria, because there's been lack of trust between the people and government. Basically between the people and politicians. Because you come here today, you say this and you do something else. That we don't have a clear description of what their roles are or what they are. So the metrics for me, I think it's a no. Even though we know these basic things like the metric, we know this whole thing, but measuring them might be it's a big challenge. No.
Okay. Having said that,
Yeah.
what would you advise or what would you suggest we do to resolve that issue? Because it's very important when we're talking about accountability and all the transparency and all of that, holding people, demanding them to actually do what they're supposed to do and play their roles. We need to start with being able to measure those activities and then keep track record of what they're doing. How do you suggest we can do that?
First of all, I'm an advocate for open government partnership. Open government partnership is basically a co-creation platform for the government, for citizens, for CSO, civil society organizations, and business organizations to sit on the table to discuss and address issues that affect everybody in the society. OGP is one platform which we can come together to have our voices heard. We recently have the second National Action Plan in action at the moment, and it has a thematic area which talks about inclusion where young people can also participate in governance processes. So I will encourage everybody to also get into the OGP, sign up and be a part and make your voices heard. That's one way I think we can all have our voices heard. Secondly, talking about going back to the matrix, I just figured out, it just crossed my mind to say we have a code of conduct in existence. We need to find a way, if possible, for the National Assembly to ever, I'm not sure what that word would be for now, but how do we improve their services to Nigerians? Because it's there for a reason, it's there for a purpose. They have their mandates, but they are not as effective as they ought to be, which basically talks about how a public servant should behave or how they should act in public or act in office, but how do we address those? So those are like foundations we need to improve and work on and engage them more often. Another thing that I'm going to say, like still on the OGP, we need young people to participate effectively in these processes. It's our country. Funny to say I'm not sure if there's a Canada now with the COVID-19 pandemic, because everybody seems to be going to Canada, all that's greener pasture. But now we need to now see like this is where we are. COVID-19 has put us in a space where we need to rethink governance processes, rethink how the society can be better for our own sake. We have to play our roles. Globally and even in Nigeria, I think we have over 50% of the population as young people. So every other time you still know the population of young people have more like the final say. If you don't speak out, if you don't act up, I'm not sure we can have the change we want to see. So I encourage every young person to participate in governance and play a role as well, be an active citizen. So those are the ways I think we can engage.
It's interesting that you mentioned youth participation right now, because I was going to ask if youth inclusion in governance and women participation in governance has anything or can help to achieve good governance in Nigeria.
Interestingly, I think there's statistics out there. Some people have proven it, but I'm not sure I can point you in that direction. But there are things we can find about young people and women who have done really great job globally, and it's more like a pointer to see how they may engage more with those people. You and I know we can actually verify like young people are creative, innovative, and active. So you need this kind of people who can bring these changes. One of the things we also advocate for in Nigerian government, how do we not necessarily privatize, but how do we digitalize our services? But you know, that comes through young people. We've seen a couple of hubs, like we innovation, We've seen Civic High in Lagos, we've seen CC Hub, come up with fantastic, innovative ideas around digitalization, technology, which are very effective and empowers young people to do more, and it also makes services transparent. But with governance processes, we still operate on analog. Part of me to see NCA is advocating for 500 million naira to upgrade their services, but that's part of the problem. But you see, will that money speak for the purpose? Is the question we now, young people will be asking when you have somebody from a innovation hub or CC hub or civic lab, accountability incubator, developing low-cost tools which can engage people, which can promote accountability, which can promote transparency. We need to now encourage them to get into governance processes or government to ensure those kind of platforms exist for us to utilize. So yeah.
Okay, so my last question would be on the effectiveness of good governance. So how, let's move away from effectiveness now, but let's see how good governance can help, because Nigeria is plagued with a lot of crises right now, from corruption to insurgency to poverty. And it's no gainsaying that these crises have a lot to do with the bad governance that we are experiencing. Right. So let's assume that good governance comes in place. How can that help to limit this the severity of this kind of crisis? Mm-hmm. I'm saying limit because I know that it's almost impossible for there to be a country without a crisis.
Right. I was going to just start from there actually, because you can control corruption, you cannot 100% eliminate it, because you still find like bits and traces here and there. However, it's a tough question as well. It's a tough one. Good governance is like the bedrock of everything we do, and we believe. So it's just like a belief system. Like you believe good governance. So we've seen that. For instance, last year we had our integrity icon 2019, and one of the top icons for 2019 was a police officer. People were really excited to see like there's a narrative of corrupt police officials and somebody that's not corrupt. So you can see the difference between that space of corruption and good governance, where you have a police officer who does the right thing, who has never taken a bribe. People can't even fathom like you've never taken a bribe, like it's not possible. Somebody that has an opportunity. So you have the corrupt section here, you have the good governance section here. For a corrupt official who works in the Niger Delta or a producing community, has access to like doing all the shady deals and earning whatever they want to earn and becoming a rich man in quotes overnight. But when you move on to this good governance side, it's not necessarily by getting rich, it's by ensuring like those oil, gas pipelines are safe. How does it serve the people? How do we preserve what's the thing called? Climate change. Talk about climate change. Talk about polluting the environment. So those are the results we have for good governance and how it affects the citizens' life. Mm-hmm. So if you talk about corrupt practices, we have bad roads almost everywhere in the country. Mm-hmm. Those are like dividends of corruption. But now you're talking about the dividends of good governance, not necessarily good governance in the sense. How do we provide those services? We don't have good hospitals as a result of corruption. But if you have good governance in place, we have people accessing the right healthcare they need, the right education, the right economy and all of that. So I think I'll talk about the dividends of good governance instead of talking about good governance in itself.
Just before you had mentioned participation of young people, and from our experience, a number of young people are willing to participate, but then you find that the bulk of us have this idea of what do I benefit from.
Right.
So you tell them you have the power with the power within and all of that, and then they're asking you, is that all? How do we change that narrative? Because we keep saying good governance, the leaders, the people need to ask the people, but then you keep having a lot of, you listed a number of hubs and a number of governance organizations and CSOs that are doing a lot of work. And the truth is, weighing these efforts that are being put in, I feel like we should have already taken care of this whole thing. But then, what's happening? What's wrong? How do you get people to actually wake up and just do it without asking, what do I get?
I I think most programs around building young people's thoughts pattern, their knowledge and their capacity has to do with changing the narrative. Like I was saying earlier, it's more like the cost of corruption. And I keep saying people have drawn, so if there's a missing $20 million, they talk about the cost of corruption, about what that money can do. But we now need to talk about the cost of good governance and how that affects our lives. So people can, it's more like changing the narrative. There are so many negative narratives out there. So people, like you said, it's about making money. Everybody wants to make money. So the point is, I get out there want to make money, but you don't even count the cost of what you're doing. And that's why I say I pointed us back to the pledge. For me, that's the foundation. We recite these things, but we really don't know what it means. How faithful are you? How loyal? How diligent? So some people, I think I heard a joke, I'm not even sure what it said. The labors of our heroes past, is it in vain or is it not in vain? So we need to start asking ourselves concrete questions and having these thoughts. But however, participation for young people is very key. It is like Nigeria has over 180 million persons, and we know how the mass of Nigeria, how large the mass is. In everybody's little spaces, you need to understand the change you need to make starts from there. Permits me, I'm also advocating for change begins with me, which I feel has its own political backings, but it really begins in your little space. If you don't change this, what's this, Jabi? We still have another problem in Lokoja, we still have another problem in Kaduna, we still have, so it's trying to see how we can coordinate with young people, change their mindset, change their thinking process or their thought patterns, to understand like the future is yours. Everything you have to do today has like a future repercussion. So you need to now plan effectively and act in the right sense for the good of everyone. I'm not going to be planning currently. I mentioned Canada. Pardon me, please. People are planning for their kids to get better health. There's nothing different. You're only planning for good governance in another country where you have healthcare, good roads, education and all that, everything. But you don't want to put your effort into your own country. So we now need to make young people understand like the future is yours. Whatever you do now, you don't want a few people to benefit, but you need to understand everybody is like beneficiaries. We own the country and all of that. So yeah, that's my thought.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Yeah.
I just want to say thank you for joining us in this episode. We'll be drawing the conversation here from now. So thank you guys for watching. See you next time.